Hi, first of all, I would like to say a big thank you to Kat and More to Life and Fertility Network UK for creating these webinars. And thank you for thinking of me and including me in these webinars. I'm very happy to be doing the first webinar of the year on the theme of acceptance. And I think it's really important to talk about acceptance in the beginning of the year. It's usually a time when we think about New Year resolutions. What are we going to change in our lives? What is going to be different for the year ahead? And so maybe talking about acceptance is something that will help you think about your fertility journey. Where have you reached so far? Where do you see yourself going? So hopefully this webinar today will help you reflect on some of the things that might be useful for the year ahead in 2018. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And so first, I thought it would be really important to tell you about myself and why am I here today talking to you about acceptance in your fertility journey. My name is Andreia, and I was diagnosed with MRKH when I was 17 years old. This means that I was born without a uterus. So at 17, I wasn't quite sure if I wanted children or not. I just had never thought about it. I come from a very big family, so it has always been a natural part of my family and of everyone around me. But at 17, it's quite a young age to think about these things, and at least for me, it was very early on. So I was very shocked with such a terrible diagnosis. How can I cope with such a challenging diagnosis of infertility at 17 years of age? So I went through a roller coaster of emotions that you can probably relate to if you think about the time when you were initially diagnosed. There is the time before the diagnosis when we think everything is normal and you might be trying to conceive, and then there is a time after, and the world is different and changes in that moment forever in a way that we cannot go back in time. And through this roller coaster of emotions, I was asking a lot of times, why me? Why is this happening to me? And of course, I cried, I was sad, I was depressed. I couldn't make sense of my emotions or what was happening in my life. And I remember at the time my dad kept saying, it's not up to us to ask why. One day you will understand. And those words at the time didn't resonate much with me, but I trusted them. I trusted my dad's words, and they gave me hope to carry on. They gave me the strength I needed in a time when I didn't have anything to hold on to. So I believed those words, and I was reading some books as well on positive thinking and how I could cope with infertility. And I've made a commitment to myself. I've made the decision, if I can overcome this, there is nothing in life that I won't be able to accomplish. Because coping with infertility is so challenging. It's the most difficult thing I have ever done. So at the time, at 17, I've made this commitment. I am going to overcome this. Because if I do so, I am unstoppable. There is nothing in life that I'm not going to achieve. I'm going to achieve everything that I want to if I just overcome this. And when I said those words to myself, I wasn't sure how I was going to overcome it. I didn't know how it was going to look like in my life. I didn't have the strategies. I didn't know the how, but I was very committed to learning and growing and being happy no matter what. I wanted to be happy. So I stuck to it. I stuck to this commitment, and years have gone by, 17 years so far, and with ups and downs, with roller coaster of emotions, the wound is always there. But with time, I have learned how to cope. I have learned what my triggers are, what makes me feel bad, what doesn't bother me anymore. And I learned how to cope and how to manage. These days, I am a fertility nurse consultant, and I help other people cope with infertility and reaching this point of being successful in their journeys of acceptance. So the roller coaster of emotions you probably have been through it multiple times. You're probably familiar with the anxiety, the frustration, the anger, the worry, the fear, the disappointment, the impatience. And when we talk about the roller coaster of emotions, I think it's really important that we give it a proper name, because it's not like we are just going through all these emotions that don't make any sense. These emotions actually make sense, and they are part of what we call the stages of grief. So when you are going through infertility, you are grieving the fact that you will not get pregnant as easily as you thought you would. So you are grieving that loss. So all your emotions are expected and are normal. So in the beginning, you might feel the shock, the denial, the confusion. You don't understand what is happening, and that was certainly the case for me. You might have times when you feel angry, frustrated, anxious, and embarrassed, and ashamed of what is happening to you. You might feel depressed, with lack of energy, and you might even have a time when you go through some dialogue and bargaining, and you say, if only I could have this child, I promise to the universe, God, or any superior force that you believe in, that I will do anything. Now, of course, these phases of grief are not linear. So it's not like we go through shock and denial, anger, and then eventually acceptance. Now, these stages of denial, we can go back and forth during this fertility journey, and they're not linear. Something else that I would like to tell you about the stages of grief is that when we're talking about these emotions, these four initial stages, the shock, the anger, the depression, and the dialogue, these emotions come from the part of our brain called the limbic system. So the limbic system is responsible for the emotions, and we can't really control it. It's like these emotions just take over us. And it doesn't have any reasoning at all. So our limbic system doesn't have any, it's not linked to any reasoning. It's only pure emotions. And what we know is that the emotions that we have in our brain are not so much associated with the circumstances that we face every day. They are more linked to our memories, to our past experiences, to our values, and to our beliefs. So what actually makes us feel a certain way, what makes us feel the shock, the confusion, the anger, the frustration, is our values and beliefs that we have over time associated to fertility, our expectations, our values of wanting the connection, of wanting to experience motherhood, of wanting a big family. So it's our values and beliefs that are making us feel a certain way. And like I said, that comes from that emotional part of our brain, the limbic system. What you might have already noticed is that acceptance is also part of the stages of grief. And acceptance comes from a different part of our brain. And acceptance, I would like to call it not accepting completely. I would like to call it more like a strategic acceptance to begin with. A strategic acceptance because it just means that we have to start coping with not having children the way we thought we would. Start accepting that we have challenges that we didn't think that we would have. So it's a strategic acceptance as opposed to thinking about it as a whole acceptance and being 100% okay with being childless. So instead of thinking about it as this huge, big acceptance, I would like to call it, to begin with, as a strategic acceptance. It means activating the reasoning part of our brain. I think we can all agree that when we make decisions based on emotions, sometimes our decisions are not the best. Likewise, if we make decisions just based on reasoning, those decisions are also not the best. So it's good to make decisions that are based on emotion and reasoning. So activating this different part of our brain is about saying, okay, let me put some reasoning into what is happening to me right now. And when you open this part of your brain, when you activate it, it's when you start exploring options. It's when you have an idea about a new plan in place that might give you meaning in your life. So I would like to bring this awareness to you, because we can very easily get stuck in these negative emotions, in the limbic system emotions of our brain. So I would like, if possible, think about the possibility of, throughout this year of 2018, activate the reasoning part of your brain and combine it with the emotional part of your brain, and start thinking, what other ways can I bring meaning into my life? And some things that can help you think about acceptance, that have helped me as well, is thinking about, what does acceptance mean to you? For me, acceptance means being okay in my own skin and in my own body. And being okay with all that my body can do, and my body can do so many things, and also being okay with what my body can't do. Acceptance is about not being resentful towards my body. It's about allowing myself to be deserving of love. It's about allowing myself to be happy, no matter the circumstances. And it's about knowing my own boundaries and being okay with those, because we will always have triggers. This infertility wound will never go away. So it's understanding your boundaries and being okay with those, learning how to manage those boundaries. Acceptance takes time. And it's a very challenging decision to make. And it's also a very personal one. We can't tell you that in a week, in a time, in a day, in a year, you will reach acceptance. Is always about small steps. It takes time, but it's also about your personal commitment to make those baby steps and move closer and closer. I usually think that I want to be happy. Everyone in the world wants to be happy, no matter what. And as I've had 17 years of trying to cope with infertility, I have realized that happiness is not about what I have. It's not about having the right house, the right car, the right job. Happiness is about what we don't have and how we can respond to what we don't have. That for me is what is happiness. How do I respond to what I don't have? How do I respond to my inability to conceive? Because the truth is, everything, they can do anything to us, the world, the medicine or whatever. We can have so many things done to us, including taking our fertility away. But what no one can take away from us is our ability to choose how we respond to it. And that is a very big strength we have. We will always be able to choose how we respond to our challenges. And that can be very, very empowering. So you can choose to make those steps towards acceptance. And it might be that this year you move a bit closer, and then it becomes easier and easier and easier as time goes by. So I would like to reflect on, where do you start? We call it not the overall acceptance, we call it a strategic acceptance. But how do you start? What is the first step that you need to take to make sure you are in the right path? So I'm going to share with you 4 strategies that have worked for me over the years, and maybe they can work for you as well. The number 1 strategy for me has been acknowledging that my life is meaningful, and I am responsible for bringing meaning to my life and not the other way around. I'm not expecting life to all of a sudden happen and life is responsible for making my life meaningful. Not at all. I thrive and I work very hard every day to bring meaning to my life. And the way I do that is by creating things and doing things. And we all have that ability to create and do things. Maybe it's through your job. Maybe it's a hobby you have, something you enjoy doing. Something that if you hadn't created it, the world would never see it. So creating things brings meaning to my life. I do that through my work, where I support other people and I create new solutions that help them move forward in their lives, and businesses create new solutions for businesses as well. A second way that I used to bring meaning to my life is by loving unconditionally. And here I'm talking not only about loving a potential partner you might have. I certainly do love my partner unconditionally. But it can be your family, loving someone in your family unconditionally, or maybe a friend, or maybe yourself, loving yourself unconditionally, no matter what. That brings meaning to my life as well. Another way is by appreciating nature and beauty in nature. If you are outside, go for a walk in the park and notice how beautiful the sky is, or how green is the grass, or the sun is shining. So appreciating beauty in nature brings meaning to my life. And the last way I used to bring meaning to my life is by having a positive attitude towards what has been happening to me. And how do you start having a positive attitude? So some questions that have helped me develop this positive attitude towards my circumstances are, if you're going through infertility and it's a circumstance that you cannot change, how can you do so? How can you go through it with love, grace, dignity, and self-growth? I have to go through this no matter what. My life is I cannot change the circumstance of not being able to conceive. So if I have to go through it, how can I do so with love, grace, dignity? How can I grow beyond my circumstances? A second question you can ask yourself is, what have you learned about yourself and about your partner going through this? Maybe you've stuck together. Maybe you learn how to cope through very challenging circumstances. Maybe that has helped you cope with different circumstances that, after all, are not that difficult. Maybe this has made you more resilient. And maybe you are able to go through other circumstances with an ease that you wouldn't be able to have otherwise. And going through infertility, what have you learned about life? How have you changed as a person? Are there things that you appreciate more? And are there things that you no longer take for granted because you've been through this challenging journey? And maybe, out of all things, maybe you have found empathy and friendship in people that you wouldn't have met otherwise in this community that we have. And that can be so, so useful. A second strategy that I have used was changing the way I think. So there is a very useful way of managing your thoughts. And so I'm going to show you. First, you start by creating a table. And the headings in the table are thought, your emotion, your evidence that supports your thought, evidence that refutes the thought, the conclusion, and your emotion. So you can copy this table, and let's start by parts. So let's say that my thought initially is that my life is meaningless. And I believe that my life is meaningless, and that makes me feel a certain way. So the emotion that I would write there is, it makes me feel sad. And sadness at an emotion of, let's say, 10 out of 10, I feel that my life is meaningless. That triggers sadness in me at a level of 10 out of 10. So now I'm going to look at the evidence that supports my thought. Why do I believe that my life is meaningless? So the evidence that supports my thought is that I haven't been able to have a child. And so that is the evidence. I believe that children bring meaning, help bring meaning to life. I haven't been able to achieve that. So that is the evidence I have. And that's why I'm feeling sad at the 10 out of 10. And now, something that we usually don't do when we have all these emotions inside us is thinking about the evidence that refutes my thought. So if I start thinking about meaning in my life, I know I have a job that I enjoy. I know that I have a partner and that I love very much, and I have a very supportive family. So they actually bring meaning to my life. So when we talk about the conclusion will be a mixture of the evidence that supports and the evidence that refutes. So my conclusion would be, even though I haven't been able to have children, I have a partner that I love, family that is supportive, and a job that is fulfilling. And these things bring meaning to my life. Now, reaching this conclusion and looking at the emotion that I used to have, which was a sadness 10 out of 10, I would say that my sadness has lowered, and now I just feel sad, let's say a 6 out of 10. So this process is called the process of thought modification. So every time you have a thought that is disturbing to you, that is triggering an emotion in you, you can create this table and just like I did, and then start analyzing What does it make you feel? What is the evidence that supports, evidence that refutes? And then finally your conclusion, and you will notice that your emotions will improve as well. So I've put here other thoughts like I'm not deserving of love, or I'm feeling less of a woman or a man, but you can complete it with whatever thoughts you have that are not being very helpful to you. So this has been a strategy, a really good practical strategy that has helped me. And then the third thing that has helped me is creating a list of positive things in my life. And these I call emotional flooding. So if you are stuck in a moment where you can't flip over to a more happier place, I would advise you to create this list. And all you have to do is takes about 5 minutes, and you get a piece of paper and you write a situation that has made you laugh out loud. Think about a situation in the past that has made you laugh out loud. Second one is a sensual or a sexual experience. And then a moment when you were proud of yourself. And then something that you are grateful for in life. Then a reason why you feel that you are blessed. And then a spiritual moment that you have experienced. So this takes about 5 minutes. You think about an answer for each of these questions, each of these topics, and you end up with a really good list of positive things in your life. And the last strategy that has allowed me to cope with infertility and move towards acceptance was always being involved in activities and doing activities on purpose. Because sometimes we may feel like I'm so sad and so depressed that I just don't want to do anything. I don't want to leave home. I don't want to leave my bed or the couch. And that only makes things worse. That is not helpful. So you need to force yourself to engage in activities. And here we are including activities that give you a sense of pleasure. So something you like doing, it might be a hobby that you like to engage in, a walk in nature, maybe you like having a massage, something that gives you pleasure. Secondly, activities that give you a sense of accomplishment, a sense that you are moving forward with something else in your life that is not related at all with reproduction, fertility, or anything, something completely unrelated. You maybe want to establish a goal, maybe with a hobby, with doing a marathon or running 5K, or maybe a goal at work, or maybe you want to get healthy. So being involved in activities that give you that sense of accomplishment, of achieving something not related to fertility. And once you start doing these activities that give you pleasure and accomplishment, there is one step further that I would like to take you. And this is to engage in activities that challenge you to grow. So all of these things take time. Okay, so you're not going to be doing all of these in a week and doing something that challenges you to grow the next week. So all of these things take time. And but once you feel ready, once you are okay enough and you feel it's the right time for you, I would like you to engage in activities that challenge you to grow. And this basically means that you are progressively exposing yourself to activities that might be emotionally distressing. So, and I'm going to give you a very simple strategy that you can use. So you start by creating a table again. Tables are one of my favorites. And you know that going through infertility, there are things that upset you. There are things that might cause you a low level of emotional distress, things that might cause you a medium level of distress, or things that might cause you a lot of distress. And you decide on what situations cause you emotional distress. So let's say for me, a walk in the park on Sunday morning might cause me a low level of emotional distress just because it's the park, it's Sunday morning, there will be families around, babies, and that might be distressing for me. A second one is, let's say, having lunch with a friend who has children. So that for me is a bit more distressful, let's say, and distressing. And finally, attending a baby shower, that might be very distressing for me. And then we start rating our emotional distress before we engage in the activity. Let's say that I believe that a walk in a park on Sunday will give me a 5 out of 10 distress, that having lunch with a friend might be an 8 out of 10, but attending a baby shower will be a 10 out of 10. And let's say that I planned these activities and I'm going to start by exposing myself to the situations that are causing me a low level of emotional distress. So my plan is that on Sunday, I'm going to go for a walk in the park. So after going to the park, I noticed that my emotional distress was not a 5 out of 10, it was actually just a 1 out of 10. And my observation was that I was able to enjoy the walk, I was able to appreciate nature, and that I haven't focused much on children around me. So this was really a confidence boost because I thought I wasn't able to go through it at a 5 out of 10, but then it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. So once I'm confident with these activities that are giving me a low level of distress, and once I feel ready, I'm going to expose myself to the next activity. And let's say a friend of mine has children and she invited me for lunch. So I plan it and I go for lunch. And after lunch, I noticed that my level of emotional distress was not an 8 out of 10 like I thought it would be. It was actually just a 5. And my observations were that I thought I would feel more upset than I did. And I was actually able to enjoy time with my friend. So, and that again gave me confidence that things were not as bad as I thought they would be. And then I finally get the courage and the confidence to go for those activities that cause me a high level of emotional distress. And I think it's going to be a 10 out of 10. And I get this opportunity to attend a baby shower. And after attending the baby shower, I wasn't emotionally distressed at a 10 out of 10. I think I was just at an 8 out of 10. And my observations was that I managed to go through it. So this again gave me a boost in confidence. Like I said, these things take time. You're not going to do all of them in 1 week, maybe not in 1 month. It takes planning. It takes building your confidence that you can actually do them. So I would like to invite you this year of 2018 to believe that maybe it's time to look after yourself. And maybe it's time to doing activities that you feel comfortable with, that make you feel safe, that make you feel happy. It's time to engage in those activities that give you that sense of pleasure, that sense of accomplishment, that you are moving forward, that you are reaching somewhere. Maybe it's time to take a deep breath, to let go of what you cannot control. And maybe it's time to love yourself. These are my thoughts on acceptance. I would like to thank you all for watching. If you have any questions, I'm more than open to talking about, and you can find my email online as well, or Kat can share it with you. And thank you so much for listening and being available to join us today on this webinar on acceptance.